Good afternoon, it's Joyful Christian Hermit. I left out another section, and that's for Barbara, who asked these questions. I don't know if she's still watching or not, about my hermit life. And that's something that my spiritual father told me the morning after the vows, which was, it'll be 25 years ago? Yes, end of 2000. That were my vows. But I became a hermit, started the hermit life in 1999 in earnest. September 12th, whatever was the day of St. John Chrysostom's feast day. I think that's the 12th or the 13th, the 12th, I think, of September. But I'm going to talk about that another time. It's the 9 S's. Most of you have heard me talk about it, but I'll do a review of that because that's what my day is formed with. And the reality is that all of our days can have the 9 S's. There's a hermit in everyone, and a hermit ready to bloom at any given point in life, or even for a short phase of life. The hermit vocation can be for anyone, or aspects of it. It's a wonderful vocation, a wonderful way of life. There's a hermit in all of us, and some are called to the hermit life by God for short periods of time, even historically. Some saints, they'd be saints regardless if they were hermits or not. But like one of those Anthonys, I think it was Anthony the Great, who was a hermit just for a couple of years or so, a few years. And then people came and he started monastic movement of hermits. And then Anthony of the Desert stuck with it, was called to stick with it. Both are wonderful human beings. Nothing wrong with the Anthony that went on, did the monastic, left his hermit life per se to start monastic movement and to have many, many disciples and people around. And so it's okay. There's no stigma. There should not be any kind of judgment or stigmas regarding hermits. And whether you're a diocese hermit or a traditional hermit, the Holy Narrow Pathway hermit, I'll put it, I think that's a good term for them. Holy Narrow Pathway. Although the diocese hermits ought to live that also. We all should, no matter what your vocation. The Holy Narrow Pathway is for all. So maybe the traditional historic hermit is a good way to designate it, more than the Holy Narrow Pathway. Because, yeah. And there's nothing wrong. Anything that is new is going to take 100 or 200 or 300 years in the church to really solidify. And so the diocese hermit's going to take a while. The jury's still out on it as to how it's going to come together. Because right now, different bishops have different ideas on it. Different individuals have different ideas. The hermits themselves. I don't have that variation or that latitude because I'm going by the early hermits, what I've read of them. And the reason I'm not perfect is because it's not over yet. I'm still evolving. Like I said, I want to cut out the news. I thought 5 minutes. I'm thinking none of it. Although it's a good way to be focused on things to pray about from the world, but I'd really prefer God letting me know himself. I want more my life to be more purely guided by God than by the outer world, the temporal world. So I think I'm just going to cut news out totally, zap. And I used to not. Well, I think at one point early on, I watched EWTN a lot. Well, that became a distraction because they have a variety of programs. It's all very good, all excellent. It was earlier on in my Catholic life, and I appreciated a lot of the programming. I learned a lot more about the Catholic Church, and they had a news program, and they had current people, converts, and things. It got to be sort of busy for me, for my hermit life, so I stopped. And at a time, I did a lot more reading, as I said, but it's very, like today, I'm pretty much toast today, physically, and with pain. I'm not doing well with that. So my day's different today. I'm going to be getting more of these videos off my mind because I like to share these things. It's, in essence, I'm sharing with God. I'm repeating back to God what I'm learning. So I spend a great deal of time just quietly hanging with God. So we'll say, if I do a video every day, that might be, if I'm really yappy about it and lots of details, an hour. I have 23 more hours with God. So people who are working out in the world or have families or whatever, just factor in. If it seems like, she's too much talking or something, an hour out of the day or maybe a half hour of verbalizing about God or a saint or hermit life or something isn't really that much, all things told. And if it weren't outer talking, they're still in the head talking. We talk in our heads too, have conversations. I do a lot of talking with God about things I'm thinking about and pondering. And then I do quite a bit of research. And I mentioned that I researched the neighbors when they moved in. I did because I sensed trouble. I picked up on it early on and wanted to know what I was dealing with in the temporal world, but I'm not researching all the neighbors or people or things like that. But saints, I like to research saints, like the saints for the day. I get this thing that comes online with the daily mass readings, usually some kind of a writing or a poem or things like that, written by usually a saint, not always, but someone with significant thought in the history of the Catholic Church from the past. And then also they list a saint or two for the day. There's many saints who have, say, November 19th as their feast day or Memorial Day or whatever, commemoration day. And so this one site, they send some that are typical, but also some that we just don't hear about that often. And so I'm going to share one of them with you. But so I do that, and I usually look up more research than the little clip they send because I'm fascinated with these people, with these holy, holy people and their lives. And so I learn a lot from their lives, whether they're hermits or not. It informs how I'm going to live my life. It inspires me to improve. And if they're in the active life, I tend not to do as much research as if I find a hermit or someone who's more solitary. But not always. But in general, just because I am a hermit and I want to explore my options more. God and it was Saint Richard of Muret, I think is his name, Richard. But Saint Stephen of Muret, Muret, in France. I think he was 1700s, later 1700s. And I have his, see, I get anything Hermit. So I got that book. I saw it online used. I came across his name and then saw the book online. And I got it. I don't know if it's in current print. It was out of print when I got it, but you can get these books used online, Amazon and such. And it was fascinating. That's what totally changed my rule of life. I didn't mention my rule of life in my video about my hermit life, but that can go in with the 9 S's. But my rule of life got changed. I was a good maybe 8 years into my hermit life, or 7 years, when I realized that, because Stephen and Murray discovered partway through his hermit vocation, he'd had a rule of life that he thought of and thought was inspired and whatever, it was good, and mine too. But no, Stephen and Murray came up with the perfect hermit rule of life, the only hermit rule of life that's really valid. And it's anybody's rule of life. It's for anyone, but a hermit should have it. This is the rule of life, the gospel rule of life, living the gospel. Whereas I know some hermits write out all these things. I'd written out a rule of life, had all these words in it. It was sounded good, but it didn't have much actual meat to it. I can probably find my rule of life that I wrote initially for my vows. But no, the gospel rule of life is it. It's obvious. That's what we need. It's broad, it's vast, but it's accurate, it's to the point, and it's really the only one that we should consider, because it's everybody's rule of life. It's the perfect rule of life. Stephen and Murray discovered it was the perfect rule of life. The gospel, to live the gospel rules, all the gospel. Good luck to us, huh? Because we're so human. But the hermit's day and night, after a while, you realize it's God alone. It's existing with God. Brian, the neighbor man who had helped me lift the tile for the fireplace, he slowed his truck. I had waved. I was out with the dogs. They were going to the bathroom. And I waved because I saw him, getting his truck revved up. He lives catty-cornered. And he slowed to stop to say something. But he had his dog in his truck. And here were my two. Of course, my two were barking like crazy. And his dog started in. We couldn't say anything. But that was okay. It was a greeting of neighbors. He smiled and laughed and went like that. He wanted to ask something about, I suppose, if I had any rooms done yet. No, I don't. I don't even have the yard done yet. I was going to work on it today. I still might go out, do a few. I got to plant I'll say 3 things. I'll plant a trinity. I've got to push the body out. I'm having a hard time with the head pain in the neck and the left arm. So a lot of sickening, upset stomach, sickening pain today. So see that? God is saying, hang with me on your sickbed today. Catch up on your videos. Enjoy the day I'm giving you. He gives me every day. And I'm always with God, and He's always with me. And that's the main thing. And these creatures they're the ones teaching me love. And I thought it ironic because, some people would think, you shouldn't speak to neighbors. Where's a hermit going to live? Where's an old lady hermit who's got medical problems going to live? Out in the woods? Out in a cave? Up in the mountains? Out in the desert? No. We have to be realistic. I have to live in proximity to the pain doctor, to the ER, to the foot doctor, my neurosurgeon. I just about thought I need to get back in physical therapy to have someone work on this neck. It's getting worse and worse. And just get somebody different from the man who got bored working on my neck. It's chronic. And, this is life. This is what God has allowed. And other people don't need to know that we're a hermit. But they can. I mean, it doesn't matter. But in general, no, because that's how you remain hidden. We're not going to remain hidden as human beings. We live on this earth. And this old lady has to live in a neighborhood. It's safe. It's doable. That's what I have to do. And practical. But it doesn't mean that, and by not announcing I'm a hermit, offers a certain amount of hiddenness right there. Blending in, wearing what other people wear, looking like everybody else. And my pain situation has given me a perfect cover for not socializing. So she's not well. That's why people don't come to her place, or her family's out of town. They don't visit, or she can't socialize, so there's no friends coming. See, it's a perfect cover. God knows what he's doing. He worked it out great for me. But to you guys, it could seem, or somebody listening to the videos, that's not a good hermit, because they don't fit the stereotype of what you think. Then we can go back to the 1st or 2nd or 3rd century, or the prophets, and think, they have to be like that, or like, another one that I love. September 4th is her commemoration day. Santa Rosalia. She went up into a cave, up into the hills of Sicily, lived there, stayed there, and died in that cave. They didn't even find her body or her bones until the 16th century, and she was like 11th century. But she wrote on the wall of the caves, carved on the wall, who she was. The daughter of Sinibald. And Rosalia, gave her last name, the daughter of Sinibald. And lived here, and because she was dying, but people couldn't. She found a cave and had it so obscured with brush, no one could find her. People had tried to, but no one could. It took someone having a dream where she appeared and said where her bones could be found, her relics, and told them, if you take my relics around the city, around Sicily, the plague would stop. They had a terrible plague. So that came to a person in the dream, and that's one of the stories anyway. And they went up into the hills and found her bones and processed. And even a statue was sent from Sicily over to Louisiana in the early 1900s. The cattle had a plague. Their whole cattle herds were being wiped out. And they processed with the statue of Santa Rosalia and a relic of hers, and the plague went away. Faith, it's faith and prayer, and the saints help us. The people on the other side help us. The ones who are divinely united with Christ, who have become pure love, they have mystical graces. So, but hermits, she was up there in that cave, but it was a different time period. And she had to have provisions. Somehow she got them. But some are given mystical graces. I don't have the grace of being able to exist without no food. I don't eat much, but I still eat. I still have to go to the store. I have tried the level of pain with arachnoiditis. It would be a true miracle. It's a miracle that I do as well as I do, that I'm not bedridden. I'm into my 38th year of arachnoiditis. By rights, I should be bedridden. So that's a miracle right there. And God gave me the impetus to keep pushing and pushing and pushing my body to go out to garden or to do the renovating. It's slipping. It's slipping. I'm old. We're still human. But, I have to have food. I need pain meds. I took the BC that's over the counter, and it hasn't done everything. So I have protein drink with some Coke Zero in it, the caffeine from the Coke Zero, and that's helping the headache. So, but not enough to get up and going, But so that's, if I were more purified, perhaps, I don't know. It could just be that God gives that gift. Padre Pio, he had, I think, like a piece of bread and an ale once at lunchtime. He didn't eat much, and he was portly. He wasn't skin and bones. He was so pure he didn't need human food, not much of it, a little bit, not much. But, so it just depends. And there, St. Thomas Aquinas, he was obese. They had to cut a circle in his desk for his gut to fit into to do all his writing. So, just depends. I don't recommend obesity. Gluttony is a sin. It's a, what do you call it? Not a mortal sin, not a grave sin, a vice. Something that is more temporal that you can get on top of, but it's hard. Addictions like eating or something can be hard. And he ate loads of sardines. They're very oily. But he had, they thought maybe he had like Addison's disease or a disease that his body craved what's in sardines. And so that's why he ate so many, but they put pounds on. Plus all his writing, he wasn't an active person. And he wasn't tall, so it didn't take a lot of weight to make him rotund, corpulent. So, it's just different things for different people. Not any one hermit's going to be the same. And none are going to be perfect in the perfect image of what anyone thinks of a hermit. See, I even have images of hermits, too. We all do. I did when I started out. And my spiritual father knew, and he said, don't want you becoming odd, severe, extreme. He said, God wants you to be yourself, be your personality. And he also mentioned, you are a mother, and so you'll always be. Don't cut anyone out. Don't get carried away with some extreme or someone else's idea, that written or otherwise, of what a hermit ought to be. God will form the hermit. God forms everyone. See, so, but I do want to tell you about the 9 S's. That's going to be separate. Mercy, but this is who I came across today. His feast day is today, and I'm excited. Lovey, no, he's going to turn this computer off. He does that sometimes. Get down. I'm excited about someone I want to talk about and share with people. You can listen, but because we have had writings of him before. Nerses, Nerses. Nerses the Great. He's an Armenian saint. And there might be another Nerses. I think this is a different one. Anyway, I'm going to share this guy. He died in 373. And this is, I don't know why this, Lovey, I'm going to move my leg over here. I don't want Lovey getting up here messing with the computer screen. This is twisting on me on my screen. I don't know why, but there it goes again. So his early life, he was the son of a Tangeninas and a princess Bamshin. His paternal grandfather was Catholicos Husik, whose paternal grandfather was Saint Gregory the Illuminator, the founder of the Armenian church. See, Christ is the founder of our church, the Christian church, the Catholic church. And then the Orthodox and the Armenians are offshoots. The main source for Nerses' life, the 5th century Buzandaran Putmut Wink, traditionally attributed to Faustus of Byzantium, calls Bamshin, Bamishin, a sister of King Tyron of Armenia. That's his mother, this Bamishin. Although this poses certain chronological and genealogical difficulties, it says. So we don't need to know all that detail, but it was the title Bamishin was initially a title borne by royal ladies in the Sasanian period. So this is probably a title rather than her actual name, his mother's name. Since the time of Gregory the Illuminator, Nerses' family had held the leadership of the church in Armenia as their hereditary right. Although this inheritance was temporarily interrupted when Nerses' father and uncle refused the patriarchate and instead pursued military careers. So that's a little bit of history I didn't know about in the Armenian church, or the also probably is that like at the Catholic church, Catholic Christian church, there's not really been any kind of a change in the leadership, other than it was rare, but there were marriages up until sometime in the 10th century or 11th century, the 1000s, where it became a law that of the celibate priesthood, having been, you're not to be married. But they do bring in some, now there are a few married priests who converted, say, from Anglicanism. I know of one, Dwight Longenecker, who became a priest, and he already had a wife and family, but John Paul II allowed that as an exception. So there's little exceptions, but I don't know of any before this century, before John Paul II, really. It's pretty strict, but if you were born Catholic, reared Catholic, you can't be married and then decide, oh, I want to be a priest, and you have a family and a wife. No, that you won't be allowed to do that. If you are a widow, or a widower, a man whose wife has died, yes, it's not often, but sometimes there have been priests, men who become priests after their wives have died. So, Nerses the Great, received a Hellenistic education in Caesarea in Cappadocia and presumably married there. See, Orthodox and Byzantine. Byzantine is a rite in the Catholic Church, and they can marry, but it's the same situation. They have to have, once they're a priest, they can't decide to marry. But if they are already married and are called a priesthood, then they can be in the Byzantine rite. But in the Armenian, they could marry. So just want to clarify that. His wife, Nerses' wife, is not mentioned, but a life of Nerses reports that he married a Mamikonian princess called Sandhukt, who died after bearing Nerses a son called Isaac, who would later become catholicos. Catholicos is, I think, a priest in the Armenian church. A head priest, or maybe like a, I forget what they're called in the Orthodox, but anyway, that's the top name, I believe. After the death of Nerses' wife, he pursued a military career and was appointed senecapet, literally chamberlain, but here perhaps signifying sword bearer, to Arsacied King Arshak II. A few years later, having entered the ecclesiastical state, he was elected catholicos probably in 353. I think it's similar to like being a bishop, and confirmed in the office in Caesarea in accordance with tradition. He was the last Armenian patriarch to be consecrated at Caesarea. So the patriarchate. His patriarchate marks a new era in Armenian history. Until that point, and I think the Armenian rite, is that in the Catholic Church? There's 22 rites within the Catholic Church. What's another one? The priest who's still on, I think he's still on EWTN, is of that rite. And it's an Easter, he's Polish ancestry. Pakwa, Father Pakwa. He's of a certain rite. Can't think of the name of it right now, but he's a Catholic priest, but of this other rite, one of the 22 rites. So let's see. Until that point, in the church had been more or less identified with the royal family and the nobles. So the church, the leaders of the church and all in the Armenian church until that point had all been of the nobility or royal family. Nerses brought it into closer connection with the people. At the Council of Ashtishat in 356, he promulgated numerous laws on marriage, fast days, and divine worship. Among other things, see, he just a man did this, Nerses created these traditions, basically. Among other things, the council forbade people to marry their first cousin and forbade mutilation and other extreme actions in mourning. So evidently, when someone would have a death in the family, they would, do extreme mutilations of themselves, a reaction to their grief, maybe cutting or scarring their faces or something, or nose. So, and the rules and the laws were sort of cultural, not just religious. So they were good for the people, but went beyond strict religious rites or laws, but made them so because the church was broad then. It covered not only their religious spiritual aspect, but society. Among other things, the council forbade, we already said that. Nerses built schools, hospitals, leprosaria, places for lepers, and poorhouses, and sent monks throughout the land to preach the gospel. Nerses' relations with Arshak II, however, soon deteriorated. Some of the catholicos' reforms drew upon him the king's displeasure. Nerses also clashed with Arshak over the latter's extermination of certain Armenian noble houses. Nerses made a visit to Constantinople to secure the release of royal hostages and receive Olympias, Arshak's new Roman bride, who probably left with a later embassy after Nerses' departure. Arshak, like his father, pursued a pro-Arian policy, which led to a falling out with Catholicos Nerses. According to the Bazandaran Patmutwink, Imk, Nerses never again appeared at Arshak's court after the king ordered the murder of his own nephew, Gnel, Gnel, in defiance of the Catholicos' exhortations. Well, of course, Nerses would say you can't murder your nephew. in 359, because Nerses upheld, like he wanted people to live the Gospels, and he wanted the followers to preach the Gospels, see. So he was Christian and was upholding Christ and the Scriptures, and plus trying to implement proper and healthy rules for the society, like to not marry your first cousin, trying to, cut away from the inbreeding that can happen, the deformities, etc. Nerses was exiled for some 9 years along with other anti-Arian bishops. Upon the accession of pro-Arian King Pap in 369 to 370, Nerses returned to his see, so he was a bishop. The catholicos is another name for bishop then, or what we would call bishop. Nerses undertook the reconstruction of Armenian churches and monasteries that had been destroyed during the Persian occupation of Armenia, and strove toward the elimination of Zoroastrian influence in the country. The classical Armenian historians write that Pap proved a dissolute and unworthy ruler, and Nerses forbade him entrance to the true church. Other historians believe that Nerses tried to bring the young king under his control using his considerable influence and enlisting the help of some Armenian princes, prompting Pap to dissolve the patriarch's benevolent institutions and confiscated holdings belonging to the church. According to Faustus of Byzantium and Mavzes Koronatsi, in 373, Pap invited Nerses to his table under the pretense of seeking reconciliation, then poisoned him. According to another theory, Nerses died of an illness of the lungs that he had contracted early in his life. Pap regardless Nerses was killed, was dead. Pap appointed Nerses' successor without the approval of Caesarea, which refused to recognize the bishop's authority. In medieval Armenia, a legend about a prophetic vision supposedly seen by Nerses in his dying moments gained widespread popularity. See, this Pap was going to assign the bishopric or another person to be the catholicos of that territory, that see, that diocese, or so forth. And but the Armenian Church doesn't call it a diocese; they call it a see, S-E-E, and the catholicos is the head of it. So Nerses had died, but here's this prophetic vision that they thought, and this leader Pap, people knew he was no good, and there was this rumor that he had poisoned Nerses, brought him under this pretense of reconciliation to a banquet and poisoned him. Whether or not that was the way he died or whether it was from congenital lung problems, we don't know. But, it sounds suspicious to me anyway. Just because they were back in the 300s, they still had all manners of killing, envy, and resentment of other people as we do today. So, Nerses in his dying moments gained widespread popularity and underwent several transformations over the centuries. The vision that he supposedly saw went under all these transformations over the centuries, probably got better and better, more elaborate kind of a vision. Nerses' legendary vision is not mentioned by the main classical sources on Nerses' life, Faustus, Gazar Parpetzi, and Mavzes Koronatsi, although Faustus and Parpetzi do write that Nerses cursed the Arsacids, causing the fall of their kingdom. The legend first appears in a 10th century life of Nerses attributed to Mesrop Eretz, the priest. That was his nickname. Although this man who wrote this, although the main version that has reached us was redacted sometime between 1099 and 1131. That is, soon after the first Crusader conquest of Jerusalem. So, according to this version of the legend of Nerses' vision, his dying vision, Nerses predicted the fall of the Aracid and Gregorid houses, the conquest of Jerusalem by the Persians, the capture of the true cross, and its recapture by the Byzantines. The Armenian princes will be subjugated by the Byzantines, but the latter will soon be defeated by the nation of the archers, later associated with the Seljuks, leading to the total ruination of Armenia and its church. These calamities will be followed by the coming of the Franks or Romans, the Crusaders, who will defeat the infidels and subject them to Roman authority, leading to the creation of a heavenly kingdom on earth, where peace, prosperity, and justice will reign until the coming of the Antichrist. So this vision was, I suppose, what most visions would be considered sort of a foretelling of the future, what's going to happen. And it was mainly going to be the downfall of Armenia and the Roman Empire coming, and that it would reign and then that would lead also then the Roman authority would lead further to the creation of a heavenly kingdom on earth, where peace, prosperity, and justice will reign until the coming of the Antichrist. Well, now, see, Armenia, this was in the 4th century, the 300s. We already had Christianity in other areas. But in the more eastern, in Armenia, was this Armenian church and all that was with it, and Nerses. So, that was his vision. And in the art, how Nerses is known in the arts, this is just a little extra. Extrata. Nerses is a character in the tragedy Nerses the Great, patron of Armenia, written in 1857 by a playwright, by an Western Armenian playwright. So that's a little bit about Armenia, or Nerses the Great, Nerses the One, and he was major in the Armenian church. A major catholicos, and highly regarded, and held firm on standards, developed many rules and traditions, laws of right behavior and of proper worship. He didn't put up with the king, the leader, the royalty that was trying to espouse wrongful lifestyles and against the scriptures. He wanted everyone to live by the scriptures, the scriptures of Jesus Christ. So this is some of what this hermit does, especially on a day when I'm feeling very punk. And I like to, if I notice the saint for the day, find out, especially one that I don't know anything about, and appreciate these human lives and the courage it took him to go up against the nobility and the king, basically the king, and I think he was probably poisoned. Or if not, maybe he was, or something happened that made his chronic lung condition so much worse that he died. He died at an age that he shouldn't have. He didn't live that long. Let's double check that. Oh, he died in 373. Doesn't really say when he was born. But he wasn't an old man when he died. He was in his prime. He was leading the church, the Armenian church, basically. So, And he was the one that of being of the people, broke away from nobility being the church leaders also. So, and we notice today, the seminarians, the bishops choose them, or if the young men feel they have a calling, they interview with the bishop of their diocese, and it can be from any background, even converts. Converts can go into seminary. They don't have to have been Catholic for so many years or have a huge Catholic family or anything behind them. And older men, single men in their 30s or even older. I knew a priest. Oh, he was excellent. Excellent preacher, very, very well read, and a great sense of humor in the Midwest. And he became a priest in his mid-50s. And he had been very successful. He just was single. He wasn't gay. He'd invested his energies, he had a brilliant mind, into his career and had been very successful in it. And a workaholic probably out in the temporal world, a little bit with his career, focused his energies on that. But loved being Catholic, was very well read, and decided in his, I think, early 50s that maybe sort of like Thomas Aquinas, and he was heavy also himself, very, very rotund. But he decided maybe, all this work I've done in my career and the money I made, maybe it was all as straw. That was what Thomas Aquinas said of all his writing. It's all as straw. He wanted more meaning in his life. So he became a priest. And I think I don't know if he's retired, probably by now. But when I was back there, he was in his late 60s, heading into the 70s, and going strong. And like I say, very, very energized and witty and brilliant preacher, and excellent in the confessional, wise advice. He had lived. He had experience out in the temporal world, vast experience. So he was a great addition to the priesthood. And and I'm trying to think if he was a convert at some point even. I don't know about that, but anyway, it's so Nerses sort of broke through that barrier in his century, that you didn't have to be nobility, come from nobility. He had been in the military. Then he became a priest, and then was elected or assigned as catholicos. Catholicos. I should look up exactly the pronunciation, but I didn't. I'm sorry. So, whether I'll remember a whole lot later, when the pain is strong, I'm really living in the present moment with a lot of pain. It's, in and out. But in the moment, I've enjoyed this. I admire the man, and he was courageous. And however, he lost his life in his prime, or earlier than that even, and but did great things for the church, and opens me up to the Armenian church. I'm interested, and I really do think this other Nerses is more the 13th century, and he writes poetry. Or might even be later. Nerses Chornot, I think is his name. And but he took the name Nerses from Nerses the Great, or his parents gave him that name. So that's what caught my attention at first there. And, oh, this is that one who writes all this poetry and things. But no, It's the original Nerses 1. So it's, what can I learn from his life? Well, many things as a hermit. To stick with the gospel, live the gospel, the things that he taught, have courage, don't fear conflict, even though, well, what kind of conflict could a hermit have? Well, all kinds. Out in the world, with a doctor, with a sale or something that's not right, or, there's conflicts always. We're on this earth. But how to handle them. And don't back down if there's something that's going on that's wrong. Or in prayers for the world, pray for right to always stand. Pray for people out in the world to have courage in their morals and in the righteousness of God. That's something I can learn, I can do as a result of reading this, to be reminded to pray for those who are out there slugging it out in the temporal world. Pray for our leaders. Pray for our priests and our bishops to stand for right and to not cave. Not cave to anything in society or politics within the church even. To hold firm in the gospel rule. So, and for myself, obviously, to do that. So, and to be willing to die for the cause of God. And because Pap was this Nerses, nemesis, was his enemy. Pap didn't like Nerses. Nerses had admiration for his living the gospel and for the rules he made, the rightness, that he saw what was wrong and led his people to do right. So, and in my life, in whatever relationships, to always strive to do right, to speak if it needs to be spoken, what is right. If someone's doing something wrong or has a wrong thought, to try to get them to see the light of Christ, the light of the righteousness of God, the light of the gospel. So, okay, God bless his real presence in us. Thanks for listening. Hope you enjoyed Nerses 1 also. Got a little bit complex in there, all the relationships, but it's interesting all the same. Really not any different than we all have lots of relationships that can get complex. Right is always right. Stay with it. Stay with Christ.